Something has just happened in the cold, silent darkness of space that should not be possible. Something so violently at odds with the laws of motion and celestial mechanics that the scientists monitoring it have gone from confident to terrified in a matter of hours, because the interstellar object known as 3I Atlas, the same enigmatic wanderer that stunned the world by slowing down weeks ago, has now done something even more impossible. It has accelerated, not gradually, not subtly, but in a sudden, violent burst of speed that exceeded every prediction by more than 300%. A maneuver so unnatural, so aggressively beyond any known physical process, that the internal teams at NASA, ESA, JAXA, and the European Southern Observatory have been forced into emergency analysis sessions as they attempt to make sense of something that should not, under any circumstances, be able to happen. And if you want to keep following the unraveling mystery of 3I Atlas, because trust me, this is only the beginning. Smash that like button right now so the algorithm knows you're watching, because what I'm about to tell you is a kind of revelation that shatters long held scientific assumptions and sends ripples of panic through every institution tasked with keeping an eye on the skies. And let me be absolutely clear: natural objects do not accelerate in space, they do not increase speed in vacuum. Unless acted upon by an external force, they do not suddenly surge forward with such precision that it looks less like drifting physics and more like deliberate propulsion. Yet that is exactly what 3I Atlas has just done, because for the past 19 hours, our most sensitive deep space tracking arrays, DSN, Canberra, ALMA, Subaru, and the infrared arrays linked through Gaia have all reported the same thing: a sudden jump in its velocity vector, a clean, smooth increase in speed that cannot be explained by gravity assists, cannot be blamed on solar radiation pressure, cannot be attributed to outgassing, sublimation, rotational shedding, or any natural dynamic process, because the magnitude of the acceleration is too high, too controlled, too efficient, too directional, and the analysts reviewing the raw telemetry have been left staring at graphs that look like spacecraft propulsion curves, not the chaotic smearing of comet physics. And this is why panic is quietly spreading through the upper tiers of astrophysics. Because when something speeds up in interstellar space, when something changes its velocity, not by accident, but by choice, you are no longer dealing with a passive drifting rock or a loose cluster of dust and ice. You are dealing with something that has power, something that has control, something that can manipulate its own trajectory with intent. And the question that is now haunting every closed door meeting is simple but terrifying. Why is 3I Atlas accelerating? What is it responding to? And what is it moving toward? Because this burst of speed is not random, not chaotic, not the dying gasp of a natural object, but a directed, purposeful maneuver that has shifted its projected path dramatically, forcing analysts to scrap their previous models and run emergency recalculations as they struggle to determine where it is going now, and more importantly, why. Because the more they dig into the numbers, the more the terror grows. Since this is not a one-time spike, not a brief anomalous flare in its motion, but a sustained, intelligently modulated acceleration curve that increases in clean, discrete phases, each one following a pattern so mathematically elegant that it mirrors the throttle stepping routines used in advanced spacecraft propulsion systems. And that realization has left veteran orbital analysts staring in disbelief at data they cannot rationalize, especially after the Deep Space Network's Doppler tracking confirmed that the thrust, if we can even call it that, is being applied in a direction perfectly aligned with the object's newly adjusted rotational axis, meaning 3I Atlas isn't just speeding up, it is orienting itself, steering itself, and propelling itself with precision no natural object could ever achieve. And let me be absolutely clear. There is no known natural force in the cosmos that can produce a 300% velocity increase over predicted values in open space. No comet has ever produced thrust on this magnitude. No asteroid has ever generated this level of momentum change without catastrophic fragmentation. And radiative forces from the sun are billions of times too weak to account for even a fraction of the acceleration recorded, which is why the tone inside NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory has shifted from analytical curiosity to a cold, heavy dread, the kind that settles in when you realize the universe is behaving in ways that violate the most fundamental assumptions of physics and agency protocol. And the fear has only deepened after the ESA's Gaia-linked astrometric arrays detected tiny but consistent fluctuations in its luminosity, synchronized with each acceleration pulse, as though the object was venting or emitting something light energy, plasma, or some unknown form of propellant each time it increased its speed. And this correlation is so tight, so impossibly coordinated, that the photometric analysts reviewing the data set have privately described it as engine behavior, the kind of signature you would expect from a controlled, repeatable propulsion cycle, not from a drifting piece of interstellar debris. And this led to an emergency meeting between senior mission analysts and the Planetary Defense Coordination Office, who were forced to confront a horrifying implication. If 3I Atlas can accelerate with this kind of precision, if it can alter its trajectory at will, if it can respond dynamically to unknown triggers, then it is by every operational and physical metric acting like a craft, not a rock. And that possibility has unleashed a wave of classified minute updates across multiple governments as agencies now attempt to model not just its trajectory, but its potential intentions, because the latest vector projections, updated only minutes ago, show that the object's new heading deviates sharply from all previous predictions and is now bending into a path that leads it closer to the inner solar system, a shift that has astronomers stunned because the maneuver required to achieve this curve would demand exact timing, extreme energy efficiency, and an understanding of gravitational fields far beyond anything humans have ever engineered. And this curve is tightening, sharpening, focusing into a trajectory that implies deliberate navigation, as though 3I Atlas is adjusting itself with each acceleration pulse, locking onto a new destination. And that destination, according to the newest projections, is not a random path, not a chaotic drift, but a direct corridor toward the region just beyond the orbit of Mars, a region dense with electromagnetic noise, telemetry relays, and the outer edge of humanity's technological footprint. And the scientists watching this unfold are beginning to ask the question none of them ever imagined they would whisper in their lifetimes. Is 3I Atlas coming towards something, or is it coming for something? Because the acceleration we are witnessing is not the motion of an object escaping, it is the motion of an object approaching. And the implications of that have shaken every institution monitoring it. And the terror is rising because if this burst of acceleration is only the second act in whatever sequence 3I Atlas is executing, then what comes next may be far beyond what any of us are prepared to witness. Because as analysts dig deeper into this new acceleration phase, an even more disturbing pattern has emerged, a pattern that suggests not just propulsion but decision making, as though 3I Atlas is responding to something, some signal, some condition, some threshold that triggered this sudden burst of power, because the timing of the acceleration is far too coincidental to ignore. It began less than 9 minutes after the object crossed a specific heliocentric distance where solar particle density, magnetic flux, and gravitational harmonics intersect in a way that forms a natural resonance corridor. And this corridor is not a random region of space. Far from it. It is a point through which many deep space communications, signals from Earth, pass on their way to and from our outer probes. And the moment analysts realized this, the internal chat rooms exploded with speculation that the object might have detected something, that it might be responding to a form of electromagnetic stimulus we ourselves accidentally generated. Because the acceleration did not start slowly, it activated instantly, the way an automated system would react to a predefined signal or threshold. And this has sent shockwaves through the classified layers of NASA's exobiology and SETI-linked analysis teams, who have now been asked to provide cross-reference timelines of every high-power signal Earth transmitted into deep space over the last 72 hours, because the possibility still too terrifying to state formally is that 3I, Atlas, may have heard something and responded, and if that is true, then we are no longer observing a passive object that occasionally behaves strangely. We are observing an object that can receive, interpret, and act on external information, and that realization alone has caused a reclassification of the event at multiple agencies, shifting it from an astronomical anomaly to a potential contact scenario. Though no one dares use the word contact in print, not yet, not when the implications could destabilize entire governments, and while panic quietly grows in the back rooms of scientific institutions, the object continues accelerating in frighteningly calculated bursts, each one tightening its trajectory toward the inner solar system with surgical precision. And as these bursts continue, researchers have begun noticing a secondary effect: faint shifts in the object's thermal profile that match patterns consistent not with exhaust, but with energy redistribution, like a system diverting internal power, the way a craft might route energy to different subsystems during a maneuver. And the deeper they analyze this pattern, the clearer it becomes that these thermal pulses are not random artifacts, but appear to follow a repeating sequence. And when the ESA's thermal imaging consultants graphed the pulses, a horrifying realization emerged. The spacing between them follows a harmonic ratio almost identical to phased array power cycles used in human-made spacecraft, only scaled to an order of magnitude far beyond anything we can construct. And the engineers reviewing this data have privately admitted that the object behaves as though it contains a core system regulating its output, adjusting its energy distribution the way a sophisticated autonomous craft might manage its power under changing environmental conditions. And that would be terrifying enough on its own, but then came the worst discovery yet, because just hours ago, a team at MIT analyzing microvariations in its reflected light noticed that the object's reflectivity has started shifting in a patterned rhythm synchronized with its acceleration pulses, a rhythmic modulation that does not match tumbling, rotation, or any natural scattering process, but instead resembles controlled surface changes, the kind produced by panels, shutters, or layered surfaces adjusting in response to orientation or function. And this pattern is so deliberate, so clean, so undeniably manufactured in behavior that even the most skeptical astronomers have gone silent. And now the internal conversations have taken a darker turn. Because if 3I Atlas is accelerating by choice, if it is adjusting itself structurally, if it is modulating its surface in tandem with energy bursts, if it is responding to electromagnetic thresholds or signals, then we are watching something execute a sequence step by step, pulse by pulse, maneuver by maneuver, like a system following an internal script, a script designed long before it ever reached our star system, a script that has now entered a new phase one that appears to be driving the object, not away from us, but toward us. And as this trajectory grows sharper, as the acceleration grows bolder, as the object cuts through the darkness with a purpose that is becoming impossible to deny, the scientists tracking it have begun asking the question that no one in human history should ever have to ask. What is it coming to do once it gets here? Because the closer 3I Atlas draws toward the inner solar system, the clearer it becomes that this acceleration is not simply movement, it is positioning, a coordinated relocation that appears to be guided by an understanding of our solar system's gravitational architecture, so precise it borders on omniscient, and that precision has rattled every dynamic. Specialists watching the telemetry stream in real time, especially after the newest trajectory projections from NASA's Orbital Mechanics Division, reveal that the object's course is tightening into a path that would allow it to slingshot through a gravitational corridor between Mars and Earth. A corridor so narrow and so optimized for rapid traversal that no natural object could ever hope to hit it by chance. And when these simulations were compared to propulsion adjusted spacecraft trajectories, the similarity was unnerving because 3I Atlas is maneuvering exactly the way an intelligent navigator would, using gravity not as a constraint, but as a strategic advantage, conserving energy by threading itself through gravitational contours with the grace of something that has done this before. And that realization has caused several analysts to privately question whether the object is not simply executing instructions, but actively sensing, adapting, and optimizing its movements based on real-time environmental feedback, a capability that would place it centuries, perhaps millennia, ahead of our propulsion and navigation systems. And if that alone isn't terrifying enough, the latest magnetic field measurements have revealed something even more horrifying. Its magnetic signature is strengthening in perfect correlation with its acceleration bursts, not as a side effect, but as though the two phenomena are linked, like components of a single system. And the structure of that magnetic field is becoming more organized, more coherent, more patterned, almost as if the object is using the field for stabilization, communication, or some form of shielding. And as scientists struggle to understand how a natural object could generate such an intentional, structured magnetosphere, the answer becomes clearer with each new reading. It can't. And that is why the internal forums reserved for high clearance personnel have exploded with urgent speculation, because if the magnetic field is artificial, if the acceleration is artificial, if the trajectory planning is artificial, if the thermal pulses are artificial, then the only conclusion left is one that humanity is not psychologically prepared to accept that nothing about 3I Atlas is natural, that nothing about it is accidental, that nothing about its behavior is the byproduct of chaotic cosmic forces. And now, to deepen the dread even further, the James Webb Space Telescope, operating under a restricted target protocol intentionally concealed from public logs, has detected spectral absorption lines around the object that should not exist, lines that match no known chemical signature of comets, asteroids, or interstellar debris, but instead suggest the presence of materials with complex electromagnetic absorption properties, materials that behave like layered composites, metamaterials, or engineered alloys. And this discovery has sent shockwaves through the few individuals allowed to see the report, because if JWST is correct, then 3I Atlas is not merely carrying artificial components, it may itself be an engineered structure, a vessel, a probe, or something even more advanced, something designed with purpose and intent. And that possibility has ignited a frenzy of activity in the classified wings of NASA and ESA, where experts are now conducting emergency scenario planning under the assumption that the object may arrive in the inner solar system within weeks rather than months because its acceleration curve is steepening, its pulses are growing stronger, and its path is becoming more direct. Like a predator honing in on its target, and as its projected corridor narrows, a terrifying alignment has appeared in the models. Its current heading intersects not randomly, but directly with Earth's orbital plane. And while no one is willing to officially state that the object is heading for Earth, the unspoken fear saturating every private briefing is that 3I Atlas may be positioning itself to enter a co-orbital configuration with our planet, or worse, may be preparing for a close pass that could allow it to observe us, scan us, or initiate a sequence humanity is not ready to witness. And as these possibilities expand, darkening the mood of every analyst, the question that once seemed unthinkable now hangs over every meeting, every simulation, every classified document. Is the acceleration of 3I Atlas merely a maneuver or the prelude to an arrival? And if it is arriving, what will awaken when it gets here? And even as astronomers, physicists, and defense analysts scramble to interpret the implications of its new trajectory, the object continues to defy every expectation at a pace that is leaving even the most seasoned experts overwhelmed. Because the latest acceleration pulse recorded just hours ago was not weaker than the last, as many hoped, but nearly twice as strong, a terrifying escalation that pushed 3I Atlas into a velocity band no natural object in the inner solar system has ever achieved without catastrophic fragmentation. Yet somehow it remains perfectly intact, perfectly stable, as though whatever mechanism is powering it is designed to maintain structural integrity under stresses that would rip any comet or asteroid into fragments. And this resilience has forced analysts to revisit earlier assumptions about its composition, which already bordered on impossible, but now appear to hint at something far more advanced because the object's albedo, the reflectivity of its surface, has begun shifting in patterns too controlled to be random, as though panels, surfaces, or internal structures are adjusting orientation in real time to manage heat, radiation, or energy absorption. And when this modulation was plotted against the time-stamped acceleration pulses, a horrifying correlation emerged. Every time 3I Atlas increases its speed, its surface reflectivity shifts into a configuration optimized for radiative dissipation, like heat shielding plates or adaptive tiles redirecting thermal load. And nothing about this behavior aligns with any known natural phenomenon, which is why a secret joint review board composed of members from NASA, ESA, the UK Space Agency, and the Pentagon's Aerospace Threat Office has now classified 3I Atlas as exhibiting active adaptive surface characteristics, a phrase that may not sound dramatic to the public, but which, behind closed doors, carries earth-shattering implications, because adaptive surfaces require structure, engineering, and control systems, and the deeper analysts dig into its behavior, the more it resembles not a rock, not a comet, not even a derelict spacecraft, but a functioning, energy-regulating construct executing a series of maneuvers consistent with the approach phase of an intelligent probe. And this conclusion has only been strengthened by something even more chilling. Gravitational analysis teams have detected faint oscillations in the object's mass distribution that cannot be explained by rotation or by internal voids. Oscillations that suggest internal components are shifting, repositioning, or activating like machinery adjusting its internal configuration. And when these oscillations were compared to the timing of its acceleration phases, they aligned with terrifying precision, implying that every burst of speed is accompanied by a coordinated internal realignment, the kind you would expect from a craft preparing for high-stress maneuvers. And as these findings circulate among the highest clearance levels, panic is beginning to seep through the cracks of institutional stoicism, because the newest trajectory models run over and over again by independent groups desperately hoping for a different outcome and keep converging on the same disturbing result. 3. Atlas is not merely entering the inner solar system, it is actively shaping its trajectory for a controlled approach toward Earth's orbital region, but with a level of precision no natural object could ever achieve. And the strangest, most unnerving aspect of this approach is that its path is not a collision course, not a direct impact vector, but a soft intercept corridor, the kind used by spacecraft aiming to enter a synchronized orbital pattern with a target body. And that realization has hit the analysts with a dread so deep they can barely discuss it, because a soft intercept trajectory is not the motion of something that intends to strike. It is the motion of something that intends to observe, rendezvous, or interact. And that possibility has forced agencies to escalate their alert levels, triggering classified communication protocols with defense departments worldwide as they begin to consider worst-case scenarios not seen outside speculative fiction, yet here, now, manifesting in raw, undeniable telemetry. And with every passing hour, the object grows closer, faster, more intent, more coordinated, as though whatever sequence it is executing is approaching its next phase, and that phase is drawing nearer with terrifying speed. And analysts know that once it crosses the next threshold, once its acceleration stabilizes, once its trajectory locks into the final corridor, whatever 3i Atlas has been preparing for, since the moment it entered our star system may finally, impossibly reveal itself. And the question that is now echoing through every secure channel, every midnight briefing, every hushed conversation between experts who have run out of natural explanations is this: when 3i Atlas reaches the point it is now racing toward, what will it do? What will it activate? What will it become? Because nothing about its behavior is accidental, and the sequence we are witnessing is accelerating toward a conclusion humanity is not ready to face. And now, as 3i, Atlas races along its impossible new trajectory with a momentum that seems less like motion and more like intention, the anxiety inside every major scientific and defense institution has reached a breaking point, because the most recent burst of acceleration, recorded less than 2 hours ago, was accompanied by a phenomenon so shocking that several analysts reportedly refused to believe it until the data was independently verified by 3 separate observatories: a narrow-band electromagnetic spike originating from the object itself, a transmission-like pulse that lasted only milliseconds but contained structured frequency harmonics no natural process has ever been known to generate. And when specialists attempted to analyze the pattern, they found that it exhibited internal symmetry and modulation characteristics eerily reminiscent of encoded information, not noise, not random variation, but something that resembles, at least in its architecture, the deliberate output of a system designed to communicate. And while no one knows who or what the intended recipient might be, the timing of the pulse has thrown every analyst into panic, because it occurred precisely at the apex of its latest acceleration burst, as if the maneuver and the signal were linked, part of the same step in a sequence unfolding with increasing speed, and the implications of that are earth-shattering, because it suggests that the object's propulsion, its internal adjustments, its thermal pulses, its magnetic shifts, and now its electromagnetic emissions are all components of a single coordinated process, a process that appears to be reaching a crescendo as 3i Atlas closes in on the inner solar system, and the silence from NASA's public communication channels is becoming deafening as tracking feeds go dark, spectrographic data vanishes from public databases, and private research teams report that their telescope access has been abruptly revoked. All signs of a coordinated international blackout designed to keep this accelerating catastrophe from reaching the public before governments can decide how to respond. But behind that wall of secrecy, the truth is spreading like wildfire because the convergence of all these phenomena, the structured magnetic field, the accelerating propulsion curve, the adaptive surface modulation, the mass distribution oscillations, the thermal pulses, the harmonic reflectivity patterns, the gravitational threading maneuvers, and now a potential electromagnetic signal has forced experts into a conclusion more terrifying than any previous scenario. 3I Atlas is not merely approaching Earth's orbital plane, it is executing an arrival protocol, a pre planned, multi stage sequence that has been unfolding with cold precision since the moment it crossed into our star system, and the newest simulations, freshly completed and reviewed in utmost secrecy, show that if the object maintains its current acceleration pattern for even a few more hours, it will lock itself into a trajectory that intersects Earth's orbital position, not by accident, not by coincidence, but by design, entering a synchronous co-orbital path that would allow it to match Earth's velocity with frightening accuracy, a maneuver so complex that even our most advanced spacecraft would struggle to achieve it. And yet this object, this impossible interstellar anomaly, is doing it effortlessly, as though our planet were the destination all along. And now the analysts are asking a question that should never have to be asked, and a question so devastating in its implications that it has reportedly rendered entire conference rooms silent. If 3I Atlas has been adjusting, accelerating, aligning, signaling, and activating internal systems in preparation for a controlled arrival, then what happens the moment it completes the sequence? What happens when it stabilizes beside us? What happens when whatever intelligence or mechanism has driven it across unimaginable distances finally initiates whatever comes next, because nothing about its behavior is random, nothing about its approach is natural, and everything about its actions points toward a single, inescapable truth. The sequence is not yet complete. The final stage has not yet begun. And the moment 3I Atlas completes its acceleration and reaches the precise position it has been racing toward, something is going to happen, something we are utterly unprepared to understand, something that may redefine our place in the cosmos forever.